In this video, we're going to demolish polygamy from the Quran only. We will prove you from the Quran that Allah, God, enjoined polygamy or polygyny only temporarily in the past. Allah sent His commandments as a mercy and according to needs. Allah Himself is the only one who decrees, abolishes, abrogates, sends new laws when needed. And finally, you will understand the real purpose or objective of polygamy during time of revelation. God allowed polygamy due to many reasons in the past, but three were most important in that time: war, disaster, migration. They are mentioned in different places inside Quran. We are not going to discuss all of these in detail right now because sermon will go hours long, but with the passage of time we will discuss them accordingly whenever and wherever it needed. So outcome of these things initiate a necessity of polygamy in old time with some limitation and lot of responsibilities. This is the only verse front of you which deals with four marriages. It is Surah Nisa, known as chapter 4, verse number 3. You can also see translation of it by different Muslim scholars. Now this is the only verse which every Muslim scholar mention when they are talking about polygamy or plural marriages. You can see this verse here with its Sahih International Translation right next to it. Okay. All these verses are connected together. Mainly, we are going to detail only verse number 3. Any other verse which is related to polygamy, we will show you as a reference only. So, all these verses are connected together. You can read it so you will understand what we gonna discuss in a minute. From verse number 1 to verse number 6, these all verses are connected together. So, let's start. I'm going to divide this verse into two parts for better explanation. Part number 1, and here is my translation for first part. And if you fear you could not deal justly with the orphans, then marry what seems suitable to you from the females, the women 2, 3, or 4. And here is part 2, as well as my translation of part 2. Then if you fear that you cannot do justice, then one or what possessed by your oaths, that is better than not to proceed. Remember, you is plural here, not singular. Okay. So God is addressing more than two person here. You can also read Sahih International Translation next to it. My translation has some differences from their translation. It's right here, Sahih International Translation, right next to it. Okay. So from beginning, from first part of this verse, and if you fear you could not deal justly with the orphans, then marry what seems suitable to you from the females, the women 2, 3, or 4. As for second part, we will explain it further down in this video. Now from very beginning, you will notice three very important things. Number one, this verse is started with condition. Now pay attention to this. This is very important. Number two, it is using definite article the, which is al in Arabic. That is definite article the, which is equal to al in Arabic. The orphans and the females, in other words. That is the orphans and the females, or you can say the women. All right. God is instructing to marry 2, 3, and 4. He did not start from 1. This is the third thing. God is instructing to marry 2, 3, and 4. He did not start from 1. Now, why he did not start from 1, it is very important to know. You will understand reason behind it when we get at the last part of this verse. Starting from first important thing, a condition at very beginning of this verse. And if you fear you could not deal justly with the orphans, the boys and the girls. Okay. Now from very beginning of this verse, there is a clear condition. Okay. And if you fear you could not deal justly with the orphans. So it is this verse is started with a condition. How many Muslims you know ever fulfill this first condition before marrying second wife, third or fourth? I do not think so any Muslim did ever fulfill it. Why is this? Because this verse is not for present day men. Plain and simple. This verse is talking about an important condition from the very beginning, which cannot be fulfilled in present day time. That's why you do not see any Muslim pay attention to this condition. They just ignore it. Even their scholars too. They just ignore it. Real reason behind this verse, it was only for those people who were there during time of revelation. Muslims are not ready to accept this true fact. Let me tell you very interesting thing here. Easy way to justify any evil is that just attributed it towards God or say God allowed it. It is evil when you go beyond the God commandments or you impose a commandments on your own self whereas it wasn't even for you. Both way it's evil. Why it is evil now and not back then? Because when God sent this revelation, it was a only solution to a situation they had it in that time. But now men are doing polygamy for mainly lust and sexuality. That's all. Any other their reasoning is just a good cover up. The second most important thing in this verse is using of definite article the. Al-Yatama, An-Nisa, An-Nisa. Al-Yatama means the orphans and An-Nisa means the female or you can say the woman. It is definite article which means something specific or known woman, not any other woman as generally Muslim believes in but some specific woman. Okay. So if God is talking about some specific or known woman, that means revelation is also for some specific known men of that time, not every other man like Muslim generally believes in. Furthermore, Al-Jatama means the orphan. It could be boys or girls, the girls, boys or the girls, the orphans, specific boys or girls. It does not mean girls only, like you see in their translations. Reason they translate it as orphan girls so they can make a sense out of revelation for themselves. Funny thing is that those who translated it even as orphans still believe they are females because they think since God is talking about four marriages here, that is why they must be girls only. Especially when you read their so-called tafsir, interpretation of Quran. Let me give you some more example from Quran where you will see if God is mentioning any other woman instead of specific woman, he is not using definite article at the beginning of a noun. You can see right here. There is no definite article here. It just say Nisa. It don't say An-Nisa. It say Nisa. Woman. Not the woman, just woman. Any woman, not a specific or particular woman in all these verses. Similarly here with some more examples. The reason I'm showing you these examples so I can prove you that if there is any definite article used inside Quran, then there must be reasons behind it. It is not just used for no reason. Now last thing from first part of this verse is God is instructing to marry 2, 3 and 4. He did not start from 1. Meaning God did not say here marry 1, then 2, then 3 and 4. Instead, he said to those known men to marry 2, 3 and 4. Then marry what seems suitable to you from the women 2, 3 or 4. Here God is instructing believer of that time to marry 2 in a given time or more, up to 4 women in a given time, or you can say within specific period of time. Now why God started from 2? Answer is in the last part of this verse, right here. Then if you fear that you cannot do justice, then one or what possess by your oaths, that is better than not to proceed. In simple words, God is instructing believers that they can marry started from 2 women in a given time period until situation is over. Total number of women they can marry is 4. But if they know it's hard for them to deal with it, even 2 women are hard for them, then try to at least marry one of these specific women, the known woman. But if that also seems difficult for them, then only marry one of those women who they possess by their oaths. In other words, their fiancé. Okay. Now here one more very important thing. Whoever choose to marry their fiancé, then they cannot have 2, 3 or 4 women same time unless divorce happen between them for any reason. Once they are divorced and situation of orphan still exist, polygamy will be allowed for only these specific women. That's why God started from 2. When we finish last part of this verse, your concept will be more clear. Before I continue to part 2 of this verse, I would like to talk little bit about this word right here. I highlight it in front of you. Ma malakat aymanukum, meaning what possessed by your oaths. You can see their translations. Pretty much all Muslim scholars believe some sort of slave girls concept here or slave woman concept here. They believe during war, if any female capture, she will become property of that soldier. They can be traded around, no problem. Also, owner don't need to marry them. They can have sex with them without marriage. They literally believe it is the best solution from God for captives, slave girls or slave women, since they do not know what to do with them. If they release them in town or cities, that will be not good for society. Majority Muslim religious leaders believe in it a best solution from God. I say God is pure and the wise. He never allowed believers to have a slave girl or slave woman in the past, neither now or in future. It does not mean believers never had maids in old time. There's a big difference between maids and a slave woman. These kind of things create sick ideology like ISIS was a great example of it. Raping innocent women and cover up behind was it is allowed by God. I'm asking you guys, does it matter what race any woman belong from? No woman in the world deserves to be raped or slaved, whether Muslim, Jews, Christian, Hindus, religious or non-religious women. It is a filthiest crime. I would say, and worse is when they say Allah allowed them to do so. It is clear indecency attributed towards God, obscenity ascribed toward God. Even if someone believed like God allowed it in the past, is just like them. How these people are believers, and it is religion of God. No, it's not a religion of God, but pure production of scholars who are nothing but enemy of God and his prophets. All they did, they name it Islam as a cover up. And Muslims themselves always are the only one who always become first victim of it. Anyways, I will talk about it in great detail in another sermon. And also I demolish it from Quran, just like today I'm demolishing polygamy from Quran. Okay, here's a translation of last part of this verse. Then if you fear that you cannot do justice, then one or what possessed by your oaths. This is better than not to proceed. Only difference in my translation and their translation for last part of this verse is the word Allah Ta'ulu. I translated it as not to proceed. Okay. This verb is only used once in a whole Quran and it lost its meaning with passage of time. That's why you do not see a same translation of this word. They believe its meaning is something injustice, whereas nobody know this word true meaning. If anyone translate it as injustice, it will never ever fit in this verse because of negative particle Allah right here. We will talk more about it in future if needed. Anyways, let's move on. Whatever translation someone pick for this word, we can still demolish for marriages. So what we got so far, and if you fear you could not deal justly with the orphan, okay. Second, then marry what seems suitable to you from the woman or the female, two, three, or four. Okay. Then if you fear you could not do or you cannot do justice, then one or what possessed by your oath. That is better than not to proceed. In other words, your fiancé. You can marry your fiancé then. But if you marry your fiancé, you cannot have any of these women to marry. You cannot marry any of these women, which God is talking here. This verse was revealed during time of suffering for believers. There are some more verses in Quran which are also revealed during same time period. What happened? Lot of believers died in a war and they left their families without any kind of support. First part of verse is talking about those orphan boys and girls who lost their fathers due to war. Also some of them did not have any parents left, neither father or mother due to a persecution. Suppose these were the orphans during time of this revelation. Now it is just an illustration to explain you guys. Many of these orphans had no father left due to war. Also, some of them had no parents, neither father or mother left due to a persecution or migration. And these were the only believing men who were supposed to take care of them. Now ask yourself a question. Can any man raise someone else's child? Your answer will be it's something very, very hard for any man to raise someone else's child, especially those kids who do not have mothers. So, what to do with them? That's why God said from the beginning of Revelation. And if you fear you could not deal justly with the orphans, the boys and the girls, then marry, okay, then marry what seems suitable to you from the women, two, three, or four. These were the females, okay. Most of these females, these women were related to these orphans. Some might be their mothers, aunts, sisters, and so on. And some were only from their tribes. Okay. We cannot compare that old time with today's civilization where men used to be fully in charge, responsible for basic family needs. Men were responsible for females and children. It is not too long ago that culture started disappearing from world. Men had to play their role in a society and women had to play their role in a society. But as soon so-called modern world kicked in, it destroyed everything. Not just nature, but societies as well. So anyways, since these were the only men left to support and take care of these orphans, the orphans, only way they could have done it properly by marrying those females who were either related to them, okay, or immigrant or migrant women or widows of that time. But again, the known women of that time, not every woman of that time was involved, okay, certain situation during time of revelation, excluding any other female even from that time. Also, it is very important to know these men cannot marry any female who were virgin among these known females, okay, during time of this revelation. It was job of that prophet of that time to manage this situation. Virgin women were not allowed to marry among these known women. There is reason behind it. You will understand in a minute. Here is an example of verse 24 of same chapter number 4, where virgin female were forbidden to marry during time of this revelation regarding polygamy. Well, right now I'm just going to point out this purposeful corruption by Muslim scholars in this translation. Notice they translated this word as married woman. Wal muhsanatu minan nisa'i. Okay, they translate it as married woman. Now the same word is translated as desiring chastity. Muhsaneen is translated as desiring chastity. If you're Muslim, go ask your scholars which translation is true, married woman or some sort of desiring chastity. Ask them which one is true. Here's another example. This one is following verse and same word is mentioned here as well. Funny thing is that Here modern rocket Arabic grammar went totally out of way. Here same word is translated as free believing woman right here. And the Mohsanatin it translated as unlawful intercourse. Anyways, if I take this word as a married woman, that means God is allowing those men to marry with already a married woman. Ask yourself, can God allow that? Obviously, no. By the way, I know why their scholars are so confused regarding this word. I have another video just on this word. Watch it so another corruption against God will be detailed to you guys. Moving on, this word actual meaning is virgin, and this verse is tied to same verse number 3 which we've been talking about. So here we prove you that virgin female were forbidden during this polygamy revelation. So then what was the main purpose or objective of this polygamy? The orphan. That's why virgin female were also forbidden during time of revelation. Okay. In fact, many verses of Surah Nisa was related to these orphans, the orphans, especially first 6 verses of Surah Nisa, which we've been talking about so far. Here are first 6 verses of same Surah Nisa, which we've been talking about. First 6 verses. And next to it, say international translation. Well, you can take this translation as a reference only. The main reason of showing you first 6 verses are following. If you read them and then whatever I explained so far, at least first 6 verses will be totally clear to you guys what's going on. Because Quran is signed by God. Okay? It is signed by God. That's the way God talk. That's the way God mention revelations. Okay? So those orphans were boys and girls. Those orphans were boys and girls, mostly minors. Some of them had properties which their parents left for them, and it was their caretaker responsibility to take care of their properties and release it once they become mature. In other words, marriageable age. Also, do not consume their properties. So basically everything was regarding these orphans, the orphans. Also, final thing is verse number 1, last phrase. Okay, verse number 1, last phrase, right front of you. Inna Allaha kana alaykum raqiba. And Sahih International Translation is, and Allah is ever over you an observer. Now, whoever think polygamy is still valid even after all this explanation, then he must come up with better reasoning from Quran. And not just that, then he also need to explain this last phrase of verse number 1, which they translated as, indeed Allah is ever over you an observer. Because true translation of this phrase is, indeed Allah was ever over you an observer. Not what they translated. They translated it into a present tense, whereas it's in a past tense. Allah mentioned himself in a past tense. Okay? Because any prophet who come after this revelation should realize that commandment was temporary not permanent, since God mentioned himself in a past tense. And also, I highlighted all these vows, okay, Arabic vow, which mean in English and, okay, right here. This tells you guys all these verses are connected together, okay. All these verses are connected together. So all these verses are connected together, and Allah is saying, Allah was ever over you an observer. It clearly telling you that these six commandments were for those people who were there at the time of commandment. Okay. I have another video where I explain more in detail about past tense, where God mentioned himself in a past tense. It's a very beautiful phenomena of Quran, and it's a very big miracle of Quran. So today you understand a lot of things, lot of miracles of Quran. So one man is for one woman and one woman is for one man. What we understand today, most of the people in this world are hypocrites. What is deep inside them is totally different than what they pretended to be. And they know it too. They want polygamy because of lust. That's it. And for that, they use God name. It is easy because anything under God name never look bad. Well, God is the one who is all aware and wise. He is the one who exposed them today. So they can have a chance for repentance. And if they still continue with their ill conduct after this warning from me, that indeed God is severe in punishment.